and connection. And so it really does focus on educational technology, all of those social media and communications best practices. And we have been continuing that work for almost 8 years. So I was privileged enough to be able to attend the first eFormation conference, and we're going to be having our I think, eighth conference in June, and it'll be actually our 4th conference that is just all online. So as part of my work with VTS, I have had good and bad experiences of leading worship and prayers online for 4 years. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about with you comes from my own personal foibles and the very strong realizations that not everything can work online as if they were in person. Some of my background is that I'm a trained librarian, and I was 6 years as a school librarian in independent schools around the DC area. So I have that sort of resourceful, let's do some research, let's build on the good things that are happening. And then also I have that librarian instinct of like, let's share it out. There's not one right answer for everything. Let's test it out. Let's see what happens, and let's keep going. Let's keep asking those questions as we approach everything. My background as an Episcopalian is that I think that I was Episcopalian in the womb, if that was possible. I am a PK. My dad does full-time interim ministry, and so he's been doing that for many years, and he's been a priest for longer than I have been alive. And on top of all of that, I've always been drawn to diocesan work. I started as a youth and as a young adult helping out with diocesan retreats. And then I sort of continued that into starting a camp in the Diocese of Washington. And then I was on standing committee. Oh, and I was on a bishop search committee. And now I'm on the executive council of the Episcopal Church as an elected member. And so I'm on my I'm ending up my 2nd year now. All of that and more is why I have started my doctorate degree in leadership and learning and organizations at Vanderbilt. And I am bringing the Episcopal Church as my organization. And so that way we can learn a little bit more about our systems and how we communicate. And that learning in organizations has really kicked in with this entire experience. So I sort of, I bring all of those pieces in mind, and it comes back to wanting to provide the best practical tools and resources for church leaders, whether they're lay or ordained. And so this comes back to the commitment that I have for my own vocation, as well as for the department that I work in at VTS. So it's really bad when you have to write yourself notes about how you're going to introduce yourself. That means that you have lots of different lives and lots of different pieces of your life. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, so then that way you all can see it. I do have a presentation. It is a very bare bones presentation, and I have my email up there, so then that way you can have that. And I also will be, this presentation, the bare bones that it is, will be shared in a Google folder. And then I also have a very long list of links that is also within that folder. And I believe I sent it to Katie, Andrea, and Penny. Did I get that right? Was it Penny, Jay?
Yeah. Peggy.
So then that way they can be pushing out some of those links individually as I talk about them. So hopefully it's like a 3-prong attack in all of those different ways. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My hope is that, so it's just about 3:50 my time. Oh, I forgot to say, I'm located in Lafayette, Louisiana, because my husband is an Episcopal priest and he just started his curacy down here. I forgot about that element. All right, so I'm gonna make sure that I'm clicked on a presentation. That's important. First of all, I wanna say that you're doing great. You're doing great. I am amazed at the number of churches that are live streaming, that are doing things online. That is a huge percentage of you all. So I want to just uphold everything that Jay and Canon Andrea and Bishop Megan have been telling you, is that you are doing an amazing job. So talk about building the plane while flying it, and all of those different metaphors, you know, reading the recipe while cooking, all of the above. You guys are doing a great job. And please know that it takes a lot of flexibility, adaptation, and acumen in order to be able to change your skill set into something different. And you guys are doing an amazing job. So I just want to go ahead and say that in a different voice. Maybe you'll actually hear it. And so with all of that, remember that this is a reflection of your communities. And if you're going to do it, you're going to do it well and make sure that it's a reflection of your community. As Bishop Megan mentioned, don't try and compare yourself to that church down the road or that giant mega church that's on the other side of town. Remember that what you are doing is authentic to you and to your community. And so it should espouse your community's beliefs and values. So that's really important. So again, come back, keep on coming back to, is this authentic to my community? Is this something that we were doing before Corona? Is this something that we can continue during this time? And it could be a no, but sometimes it could be a yes. So really emphasizing that coming back to your community and what you were doing before, getting that steadiness can be really helpful and life-giving. So this was my friend's birthday the other week. And so talking about gathering. So we had at least, I think, 4 different states in there. We had 2 babies. It was amazing. And so coming back to those community elements are so important. And this is something that we are good at church, is that we're good at creating community. And it doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter if we are in somebody's home for home church, or if we're in a community center or in a gym, because that's where we're worshiping, or if we're online via Zoom. We can create that community. And we can do it in all of the different ways that we love to create community. And that can be through prayer, through connection, through study, through formation, and most importantly, joy of coming back. We're in the Easter season. We are no longer in Lent. We can focus on the hallelujahs. We can focus on the joy that comes with being together, and that we're above ground and breathing. And we can continue coming back to that joy that is found in Jesus. And this is my husband when he was FaceTiming with one of our little seminary kids who loves Star Wars. And coming back to that joy and rejoicing with others. This was one of our friends who was announcing her job placement, and it was just so wonderful that she could do that. And even in these bizarre times, she was excited to join in the community, whatever it looked like. And reminder that creativity is something that happens all of the time in our different communities. And this just may look a little bit different. It might make you uncomfy, and that's okay. But remember that creativity comes with inclusive and participatory worship. It could be that your church decides to do the daily offices, to introduce that to various people. I know that that's something that's new and different for a lot of different parishes. And figuring out like Compline is always a favorite. I know a lot of camps love Compline. So how can you bring that into your, how can you bring that camp experience into your church? So thinking about how can we use this platform that is different to worship in different ways. I know a lot of people who are doing formation online, and that is amazing. So just think of the opportunities that adult forums or Sunday schools can have that can actually expand open the doors that were previously, you know, because of soccer or because of other various commitments, that we really are, we can take this opportunity to bring together to do some serious Christian formation. I know Bishop Megan and Canon Andrea and Jay have provided you with some amazing resources with Good Book Club. And I hope that you all are planning on doing that. It's a wonderful program and one that I have supported over the years. So I hope that you're taking advantage of all of that. Coffee hours, I know so many people are doing coffee hours. I think it's a wonderful way to see each other's faces, to do that check-in that is so important for so many in our community. And also just to breathe with each other, to be with each other, and to continue to be that connection and that community with each other. And I know that there is also frustration. I know because I have been there and I feel like I live and breathe it every day. Even this morning, you know, I had this moment of like, why am I doing this? Why do I care if somebody is upset with a YouTube thumbnail that may not be the most flattering, but none of them are. And so it comes back to that frustration, but then also that recognition that everybody has those moments. And that everybody gets into those crappy feelings of, you know, comparison is a thief of joy, and recognizing that, and also realizing that everyone is going through the exact same thing. Even the largest parishes that I have talked to, they are on a very steep learning curve as well. And so recognizing that it is a huge adaptive challenge for everyone, it is a huge learning curve for everyone, and there are major hurdles for access. I know we had the phone dial-in question about Zoom. I do have some links that are included in that document if one of my tech assistants wants to drop them in. Can we get a dispensation for a Star Wars liturgy? I'm gonna say yes, but I am not that. I am not that one who gives the authority. Okay, Bishop Megan, that was like a maybe. How about prayer C at the very least? Okay, she gave a thumbs up for prayer C. And so I have some phone-in resources to send you all. And phone-in is a great option for those people who really only have that is their one piece of tech, is the phone. And so this is my typical setup. I think right now I have 4 screens in front of me, and so it's sort of that setup plus my phone in front of me. And so this is my tech setup. I think my friend and I were comparing setups, and he inevitably has a better one because he's a tech guy for the government, so he can have whatever he wants as far as I'm concerned. But we come back to this issue of safe church. So if any of us have been in church leadership in the past few decades, you've taken the safe church training, safeguarding God's children, safeguarding God's people. I think that there's one for work, there's one for schools, there's one for camps. I have taken them all. And so, with that, safe church is a really important topic that we need to make sure that we are addressing within these pieces of work that we're doing. I know that you all talked about it on Tuesday when talking about, there was some questions about medical confidentiality, of making sure that you are broadcasting this on the internet, of really making sure that you're doing a good job of only using first names, just like the way you identify children in various different pictures. And really taking advantage of, especially if you're using Zoom, the safety nets that they have always had in place that have since moved up in prominence after all of the Zoom bombing incidences, especially after the FBI got called in with all of that different, with all of those different issues. So the quick and dirty versions are making sure that you're using waiting room password or registration. I always recommend a combination of these 3. I use registration and waiting room for my open office hours, because then that way I can get people's information to email them or to get in contact with them. And then I also use waiting room because it's just a nice safety net. So I definitely love each of those features. I know that a majority of our accounts do have passwords as a requirement. Those are also really wonderful. With those passwords, I would definitely recommend that you use numeric only passwords. So then that way it's the exact same password for those, whether you're logging in on a computer, tablet, smartphone, or you're having people dial in. So then that way it is one and ready to go. Turning off person-to-person chat. I'm not sure if our friends here, oh no, I think, nope, The person-to-person chat is up and running here, but they have disabled screen sharing for all participants. So so it's sort of a combination of all of these different features. There are so many different features that you can enable or disable. It is completely a minefield, but you can always find some good nuggets in there as well.
Sarah,
So,
yeah, we've had a question that comes straight up from this. Just some of those limits might make it hard for new or low tech members to join. Have you discovered that at all, or?
So with the passwords in particular, I think it's just always important to put the long link that includes the password within the meeting link, and then always listing, as I think Jackie did when she sent it out, of listing the meeting ID as well as the meeting password. And that's why I would definitely recommend, especially if you're trying a new tech, that you give people the opportunity to drop in to try it out, sort of like open office hours or chat and conversation, something low stakes, before launching into what people could perceive as a high pressure situation, vestry meeting, worship experience, or something where you don't want people to be interrupted. You can always open up the Zoom meeting, if that's what you're using, about 10 to 15 minutes in advance of a worship or meeting. So then that way, people who might be a little tech anxious can go into that meeting space early and sort of get some one-on-one individual help, much like Katie was giving at the beginning of this meeting as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Was there anything else very, very relevant that I completely glanced over? I got very distracted by all the Star Wars worship, and so I decided not to pay attention to the chat. The waiting room is a feature that was not enabled for this meeting, and there's nothing wrong with that. What it does is that it's exactly what it sounds like, is that the host of the meeting, oh, and I would definitely recommend, and I did not put this on my Safe Church slide, so I have to go back and using it, is whenever you are hosting an official church event, is that you have more than one host. So in this meeting, I believe if we take a look, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 co-hosts. And so that is Andrea, Jackie, Jay, Peggy, Katie, and me. I think I missed somebody, but and so what it does is that it provides the opportunity to for everybody to have that same hosting power. And so you can kick people out, you can mute people. And so it sort of distributes that those jobs that can sometimes be very harrowing. And so then that way, a lot of different people have been blessed to do the work if they need to kick somebody out, or if they need to mute somebody, or if they, if they need to screen share or various other things. So coming back to a waiting room, the host would get a notification of a little pop-up on the participant list, and then the host would have to let that one person or group in into the meeting itself before then. That way people can show their faces or their voices can be heard. And so that's just one of the things that was an option that has been a strong recommendation from Zoom. So then that way you can use it, you can see people's names. If you may not recognize their name, you can send them a little chat, or you can let people come on in. And I do have a really good Safe Church video that Andrea just put up in the chat box. Yes, exactly, Bishop Megan. Thank you so much. Waiting room is like the church narthex. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so I will definitely talk about breakout rooms. I don't have a slide about it, so we'll talk about it at the end. All right. So music. A lot of people have many questions about music on Zoom. And I am here to say is that there are lots of opportunities to share music on Zoom and to share music on our live streaming, but then there are also a lot of issues. So I'm acknowledging that it's a both and situation, certainly. The opportunities are that you can share a beautiful solo or a new piece or a video of music, and the issues are more than I would probably care to name. Copyrights, sound quality, and anything that you can start off with, that is the issue. I know a lot of our music directors are feeling that they are just not equipped in order to be able to adapt into this space. And so I would, if you are working with your church leadership and your church musician, to make sure that you are paying attention to what they can do and what they cannot do and what they feel comfortable with and not feel comfortable with. I know the Association of Anglican Musicians just put out a press release today talking about making sure that musicians are still using the social distancing guideline, and that they are taking all of the precautions that they need to in order to stay healthy within their working environment. So just something to be aware of, certainly. So hold on, I've messed up my screen here, so I'm just futzing. So I did put together a few different things about church copyright, because that is something that people are very anxious about. And I am working on getting a very comprehensive post from one of my colleagues in order to make sure that there are some good guidelines and some exemplars about how you would go about asking for copyright, of putting your copyright information and licensing information in Facebook and in YouTube, and also making sure that, again, you're doing due diligence. One thing that I do want to emphasize with music is that it's a huge difference between a closed meeting that you are not broadcasting out on Facebook or YouTube versus one where you're broadcasting it out on Facebook or YouTube. So most of the time when copyright is an issue, it is because you are opening up the church doors and you're posting it in those public places.
Bishop has asked me to at least draw your attention to Peggy had just posted some of the copyright resources. Peggy, I may have you just repost it again real quick. Jay has posted the hardware links.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. You're doing an awesome job monitoring the chat. So there is a copyright webinar that is happening that's sponsored by Caffeinated Church out of the the Episcopal Church in Colorado. And so that is happening on April 27th. And so that's with a combination of one license, with CCLI, with a few of the major copyright licensing holders. And so that's definitely something that I would commend to you. The church publishing has also given, I'm just narrating the links here. Church publishing has also given free access to a bunch of the Easter hymns from the hymnal 1982. I don't know about any of their other publications though. And then I also put in some hardware information as well about specifically, I think Bishop Megan wanted me to mention about the, if you're going to use the church PA system in order to pipe your sound in. And I definitely would recommend that. That's how my husband's church is doing it. And that's that first one is the, oh no, it's actually the Scarlett 2i2 is how to grab that sound from the church PA system and pipe it into your computer, essentially, which is the main brain that is hosting all of the streaming. And I would also say, especially when it comes to hardware, is that I don't know if anybody has been watching Masked Singer or the Tiger King reunion, is that when you are looking at all of those people, they are only using their AirPods, just like Bishop Megan is using. They are only using their AirPods to be their microphone. So like, please know that like you might actually have the equipment around your house already. So sometimes it doesn't take anything more than we already have. All right, so this was the Palm Sunday service that I tech directed, and I think that maybe they were a little bit too close, but We're not going to talk about the social distancing guidelines that we might have violated, but it was the passion narrative. So that was everybody who was in the service. It was just the 4 of us who were in the building. All right. So liturgical choreography is my new favorite phrase. And much like we have our liturgy fit our nave space, or fit our camp space, or fit our gym, or fit our chapel versus our entire church space, our online worship also needs to fit this space as well. And we need to make sure that we are aware of what is happening and how we are projecting, and then how we're asking people to participate. So making sure that we are doing a liturgy that is indicative of this space, this online space that we are in. And reminder that you don't have to do this alone. Make sure that you are bringing people on board in order to help you. You don't have to be that one person who is just leading morning prayer and leaving in blank spaces where the responses will be. Bring somebody on, have a second voice, and making sure that you have readers and prayers, and you use your ushers, welcome and welcomers and hosts as indicative of this space, as indicative of the digital space that we're in.
Sarah, just a second on this. That question has come up quite a lot from folks on this chat, which is how do you do that if we're in separate spaces? Are you going to cover that?
Yes. So, but briefly, if you're on Zoom, you have everything that you need. You can be in this gallery view, and then you can designate people to talk at certain times. This is one of those times where you would need to, again, flex the liturgy to fit this space. So rather than relying on everybody's bulletins in front of you, you would probably want to use slides. So then that way we can all be at the same place within the liturgy together. And so again, it sort of flattens the experience. It gives people everything that they need. So then that way they're not trying to like be on their iPad or on their iPhone while also then trying to pay attention to the computer. And so again, giving everyone what they need. And that's what we do in our pews normally, is that we have the hymnal in front of you and you have a bulletin in front of you. So then that way you know where the service is going. A lot of people have expressed concern, frustration, anxiety around introducing new tech into new populations. This is where recognizing the gifts of your people is really helpful. A lot of people have been using tech deacons, or somebody came up with the idea of techalites, like acolyte, but tech. Of giving people the opportunity to say, like, you know, Ted, it sounds like you're having some issues. Jay, can you go over and help Ted? And it might be a phone call, or it might be a text message. So then that way people can know that they're not, you know, off by themselves, wandering in, you know, anxiety and frustration, but there is somebody next to them. And sorry, Ted, I can see your face, so that's why I picked on you. And so recognizing that, again, just as if we were holding liturgy in our spaces, we have all of these different people who come in and help. So altar guild, acolytes, readers, ushers. So bringing those types of roles into our online spaces. And again, making sure that we're giving everyone what they need. And make sure that if you you're trying this out for the first time, is that you are having a safe place for feedback. That is really hard to do. I fully admit that. I had some wonderful colleagues when we were first starting to do a lot of Zoom meetings and webinars that I had that safe space with, of where we would walk through it just as if we were doing a practice run. We'd go through it. What are we doing here? How are we sharing our screens? Let's talk about our sound. We'll make sure that the doors are closed, so then that way, you know, the sound from the hallway doesn't come in. And so we were walking through every little step. And because we were walking through every little step together, when something went horribly wrong and we got over it and we got through the webinar, we were then able to debrief it and say, what is the frustration that we are dealing with right now? And so again, getting that feedback, that safe feedback of somebody who you trust, is really an important part of the process. All right. And we are now in post-Easter times. I know that there was a huge push by absolutely everyone in the church to get through Holy Week and to make it through Easter. And now we're in Easter and there is no end in sight. So recognizing that we are settling into normalcy, and that's hard, but it's also comforting. So recognizing what our routines are, and living into that. You know, we typically have parishes that meet every Sunday at 10 a.m. So how can we make that normal? And it might not be 10 a.m. on Sunday, but it might be 10 a.m. on a Tuesday for morning prayer. So keeping up that routine, so then that way we can be there for our people and gather the community of God as we are supposed to. And as we always do, we do a great job, well, hopefully, we do a great job of introducing liturgy and our spaces to people. We want to make sure that, that we are having that same welcoming, norm setting and expectation setting experience. You know, again, Katie and Ken and Andrea did a great job of this, of like, we're not muting you permanently. We're asking you to stay muted because it is less distracting. You have to do that every time you have a meeting, of establishing those expectations, of establishing what those norms are. So then that way it is a less intimidating experience, because everybody's cultural expectations are a little bit different. We need to make sure that, again, we're stating them out loud, so then that way we know. I know with my online classes, I have the expectation that my face stays up on on the screen most of the time, because they're only 90 minutes. We have that expectation as doctoral students. But I've heard of some seminary students, when they're in Zoom meetings and Zoom classes, that they don't have that. They don't have those cultural understandings, those group norms. So again, establishing those norms, whatever they are, and establishing those routines are incredibly important for comfort as well as for consistency. All right, so I was watching my friend, and all of a sudden the dog walked in. And the dog had to go over to Mibby and say hello to Mibby. And that was what happened, because they were having church at home. So it's hilarious. I love it when pets arrive in services and our children like run past screaming. It is completely life-giving. And again, it's reflective of sort of what happens in our churches and everyday experiences. So live streaming. So I think we've had a lot of questions about all of these different platforms. Yes, yeah, I'm getting lots of nods for the people that I can see. And so I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown of some of these options that, that I can sort of help you navigate through. I also have a video that I created on Zoom webinar versus meeting. I will say, because otherwise Katie and Jay will give me the eye, a webinar is an extra additional cost on your Zoom account. And I don't think that the diocese has agreed to pay for that. Yeah. So I'm just putting that asterisk in before I mention it. So a Zoom meeting is obviously just like this. A Zoom webinar is if you only want to see certain people's faces as panelists. Again, it depends on your culture. It depends on your community. The National Cathedral obviously has sort of more of the webinar experience of where they are controlling what everybody is seeing. But a lot of places are using Zoom meetings for their worship experiences because everybody wants to see each other's faces and to do that visual check-in. So again, it depends on what your cultural norm is. So it could be that, you know, your cathedral in your diocese. Do you all have a cathedral? I realize that a lot of places don't have cathedrals now. Okay. Okay. Your cathedral is that more of that webinar experience. But then, you know, the parish within that cathedral, the worshiping congregation within that cathedral does a Zoom coffee hour in order to do that check-in. Again, completely depends on your people. So I just wanted to go over Zoom meeting versus Zoom webinar. Both Zoom meeting and Zoom webinar can go to Facebook Live, and they can also go, the Zoom meetings and Zoom webinar can also go into YouTube Live. So, so that is possible, and that is available on a pro license and above. So I believe that most everybody in the diocese has that pro license. And so again, so you need that license in order to be able to do that streaming element. The Zoom to Facebook has gotten a little bit more complicated, at which I realized today when I tried to stream a webinar and was unsuccessful. And there is a, thank you so much, there's a that new directions link is a step-by-step and how you can make sure that the Zoom webinar goes into Facebook Live. And as I think I've seen some of the chats going back and forth of, you really need to make sure if you are doing a Zoom meeting to a Facebook Live, then you are making sure that you are not mentioning people's first and last names together. You are not saying, you know, where you are located, that I am at blah, 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 blah house in whatever city, that you are treating it as if you were broadcasting it over the internet, because it is. And that's hard. So I fully acknowledge that that is not something that we are normally used to as a worshiping body, but recognizing that you need to take those safety precautions within those spaces. I think we've had a few questions about the chat box, and all of the links that Jay, Katie, and Andrea are copying and pasting are within that bit.ly link that is readily available to you all. And based off of our conversations today, I will be adding in other resources as well. So if you don't copy absolutely everything, it is okay. So I always like to have that, that catching at the end. So Facebook Live, who here has used Facebook Live? Just give a little holler, give a little holler. Yeah, lots of people, lots of people. So the advantage of Facebook Live is that you can have that real-time interaction, and you can have people comment, and you can have people put in their prayer requests, and you can have people say amen, alleluia, all of that beautiful things. But one of the disadvantages of Facebook Live is that it is live. That live streaming is really nerve-wracking. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that. When something goes wrong, it inevitably goes so wrong. And then in the moment, it's even more nerve-wracking, of course. And so you have the ability to do those comments. And so that's the same thing with YouTube Live as well. So people would be able to comment, to be able to put in their prayer requests. And so it's just, it's sort of same thing with Vimeo Live as well. So if you want the interactions with people, there's sort of like tiers. Again, so comments only would be something like Facebook Live or YouTube Live or Vimeo Live. If you want the voice and faces to come in as well, that would be more like a Zoom meeting. But again, you need to definitely figure out the expectations about what all of those different pieces look like, of how you're going to ask people to participate. And then of course, if you're going to ask people to send in their prayer chats, to then like wait for a second and recognize that it always takes a second to type out all of those names that people want to pray for. And so adding that in, of making sure that your worship leaders, if they're off at the chancel, that they are waiting for those prayer requests to come in. So it really is like this whole kind of stage management element that comes into it that I don't think that most worship leaders are prepared for. I know when I tech directed, they were not prepared for it. They were not staring at the camera. They were not paying attention to me when I was trying to flag them down of when their mics were off. They were just not prepared. They were not prepared in the ways that so many of us were not prepared. And so when we talk about storage, I think that was a specific question came up about storing videos or YouTube channels or YouTube pages. There are so many different options, YouTube, Vimeo, and Facebook. So know if you do a Facebook live video, it then is already on Facebook. So there is that advantage. And Facebook definitely and Facebook Live are definitely ways to invite people into the conversation, and that is an easy way for people to immediately share it and maybe invite people in to worship with you. So I think we're about to go into, I think somebody just had a question about YouTube Premiere and Facebook Premiere. And so I forgot to add on YouTube Premiere here, but know that a lot of parishes, I think a majority of them, are not live streaming their worship. They're not putting it up on Facebook Live, or they're not putting it up on YouTube Live. They are actually pre-recording the worship and then editing it, and then using Facebook Premiere or YouTube Premiere to schedule that video. So there is an advantage to that, of that you don't have that that live worship experience mess up, but then the disadvantage is that you don't have that live worship experience interaction. So it's sort of, you have to pick and choose sort of what again, this comes back to your community, of what your community and what your worship leaders feel comfortable with. Seth seems like he's having a good experience. Yeah, they're really great because you can ensure that the content is already there. Yes, snaps for that. And it views like a live event. And I forgot to put this up, but you can also do Facebook watch parties as well. And so you can, again, invite people into the conversation. You can say, hey, Peg, Jonathan, Rosalie, come and join me to watch this video, and we'll watch it all together. And then that way you can have people add in their prayer comments or amens as the video is going. As say Daniel, yes, it does take up a lot of storage space on your computer to be pre-recorded. That's why it's always good to then have that cloud backup of YouTube or Vimeo and have that ready to go. The two editing services that I recommend, I have a Mac, so I have to admit that I'm total Apple bias, so I'm just gonna start with that. I do use iMovie. I've used it for about 9 years. It's only just been within the past 3 weeks where I've sort of reached my threshold of where I'm like, okay, I've really hit the next level, and iMovie cannot take me there. But iMovie is wonderful for starters. It's wonderful just to get your toes wet. Know that it is also available on your phone as well as on your iPad. So, and it's inherent within the operating system there. Video is also really great, especially if you're trying to group edit. That's a hard thing to do, group editing, just like group editing a paper is hard to do. Group video editing is also really hard to do. Video is an online editing platform. And so we've used it for the Advent Word videos. And so then that way, you know, my colleague in Rochester can drop in videos, and then my student in Alexandria can then go ahead and add in the title cards. And it's wonderful just to have that continuity online. All right. So opening the doors. So I know that that this is something that Canon Andrea and Bishop Megan will be working with you all once we sort of understand what our worship impact has been of making sure that we are using these online worship opportunities as what they are. They're good for evangelism and welcome. Again, depending on the platform. Making sure that you are with Facebook Live, that you're looping people in, asking them to like the Facebook page or to follow up in the comments and saying, thank you so much for coming in to worship with us. It was great to have you here. Just as if you were doing that in your community. So it comes back to, like, how do you typically welcome people in your community? Do you give them a mug and you know, a packet of fair trade coffee beans? That is a great idea, by the way. Please don't do that. Or you know, do you have a follow-up phone call the week after that they visit? So keeping that sense of normalcy and having that welcome is really important. The Facebook watch party, again, this is a great way for your people to say, hey, you know, come and worship with me, come and hear my priest's amazing sermon, come and hear our choir in their virtual anthem that they worked so hard on. And so then that way it is, as most of us know, the way to get people into the doors is not typically through the website, it's through that personal invite. And so all of our Episcopalness is that sort of butts up against that. But having people say, this is my church, this is a place that I love, come and join me for that, is essential to getting people into the doors that have not been there before. And a Facebook watch party is a pretty low stakes way of doing that. All right. So this is a picture of my phone when I deleted Outlook. This is right before our honeymoon. I made sure that I did not have Outlook on it, which is my work email. So then that way I could sort of shut off that piece of my brain, which was good because it was right before Corona and I had no idea what was about to happen. So I wanted to put this up here of making sure that you all as leaders are taking care of yourself. I'm sure that, that all of the diocesan staff have been saying this, but make sure that you are doing non-church things on your computer. Maybe you're watching the best show known to man, Schitt's Creek. It's great, recommend it to everybody. Or, you know, you're making sure that you're doing some FaceTimes with your grandchildren to break up the monotony of attempting to figure out how to have a choir on Zoom, of really taking a step back and making sure that you're taking care of yourself, of recognizing that even though we are working from home, that does not mean that when we are home, we are working, of really taking care of yourself in all of the ways that it covers. And talking about resources, so again, that bit.ly link, which is that first link that will be to a Google Drive that will talk about this presentation, as well as that long list of links that keep on coming into the chat box. And then I would also commend my website on eFormation that includes a lot of all of these different resources that I've been curating throughout the past few months. The Episcopal Communicators Great is wonderful. Forma is another wonderful group. We also have the Zoom Church, which is curated by Bruce Reyes-Chow, an online church from PRC. All of those are Facebook groups, Episcopal Communicators, Forma, Zoom Church, and Online Church from PRC. So all of those are great. I also have, I know a few different people, I also have a Facebook watch party video that I can drop in with you all as well. It's about 10 minutes. So with that, coming back to my opening slide, you're doing great. I am not, when I'm saying all of these different resources, I'm not saying that you need to be using all of these different resources. Like with anything, you try out something, see if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, it is okay. It doesn't mean that you're doing church bad or you're not doing your due diligence to bring your community together. Everything works for differently for different people. And so just saying that these are all of these little different things, even if you just take one thing and enact it within the next week, is amazing and it's great. And it, again, that huge learning curve that all of us have been on, we're all on it. We sometimes we just had different starting points. So recognize that even the most adept at us are still having to shift and change on a dime all of the time. So I know that Jay sent this out within the e-news. I do have open office hours twice a week. So that is, I have to translate it into Pacific time, so give me 1 second, 1 to 2 on Tuesdays, and then 9 to 10 on Fridays. I'm also in Central time, so like I feel like I've been living in 4 different time zones this week. And so know that these are exactly what it sounds like. It's open office hours. It's completely up to you to come in with questions, and then I and my special guest try to answer them. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't work out. It's at the very least entertaining. Most of the time there's a good group of people there, and it's a nice banter back and forth about what everybody else is doing as well. I also have my eFormation flagship all-day, all-online conference coming up on June 3rd. It does start very early for West Coasters. I'm so sorry, but you're only being missed out on worship. It's fine. And so I do have some amazing presenters, including Ellie Singer will present about YouTube, Bruce Reyes-Chow, who I think that Andrea is in the Zoom Church Facebook group, and that was one of the ones that I recommended as well. He's going to present about how to hybridize worship. And then we have Sandy presenting, who is on the Bishop Curry podcast. So she's one of the co-hosts for it. So she's going to talk about story sharing. We have Keith Anderson talking about digital fatigue. And we have one of the Pauline sisters talking about media studies. So I'm just so thrilled. And it's going to be a great day. So I say between this meeting, the open office hours, and then eFormation, I know that I will see you all again at some point. So with that.
So Sarah, there's a question that has come up if you're ready to sort of start looking at.
Absolutely, I'm gonna take a sip of water and then we can keep going.
Let's give Sarah some love for her work far. There you go. Thank you, Sarah. And we've had some specific questions that you've touched on as we went along, but probably the one that has come up the most is some iteration of integrating things into the worship, whether it's integrating slides or integrating, it's just sort of these integrating questions. And I know that like when you have a very, very, very specific question, sometimes our Zoom Church Facebook group or Episcopal Communicators Facebook group can be a better place to do that. But could you just take a swipe at the question of integrating these different pieces?
Sure. I will try my best. And this is one of those things where I can talk about it generally, but then when in order to actually be helpful, it needs to be specifically for your context of like what you're trying to bring in what platform, and to stream to where. I was trying to like think of all of the different prepositions that involved. And so a lot of people have been asking about worship slides or various other things. The easiest thing really is if you are meeting in a Zoom meeting, that is easy to do. Just like I shared my screen that had my Google Drive slides on it, that's how you can share that information. If you are trying to incorporate videos into your worship, there is one little button that you need to press in order to have computer sound transfer over into your participants. I think I mentioned that on one of my videos. Trying to think of what else. If you want to go Zoom to Facebook in order to get slides and again, pictures, music, that is also a very easy way of doing that. If you are trying to bring in a lot of different people, again, Zoom meeting is very easy to do that. And if you want to just have your worship team on Zoom, and then you transfer everything, you stream it on to something like YouTube or Facebook Live, that's an easy way to control it. The other way of controlling it would be via webinar. And then if you want to get sort of more technical with it, I know there are quite a few different streaming services that people have used. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop these in again, so then that way you can see it. And can somebody just make sure that I sent Jay the correct link? It's always a good one. All of these are ones I'm going to admit I have not used any of these myself. I am strictly a Zoom or Facebook Live gal, but a lot of these have come with high recommendations from people who I trust. And so these would be things like if you wanted to be on Zoom and then also broadcast onto Facebook Live and onto YouTube Live. I know that OneStream, and that is a link, by the way, onestream.live. That has been really successful with the Diocese of Georgia, where they have actually pre-recorded a video, and then it has been put out on YouTube and Facebook as if it were a live video. Did that answer that question?
I think it did in the level that's possible here. And
exactly. I know. I'm so sorry. It's hard.
It's okay. One of the things I'm wondering is if somebody is on this chat who is successfully using slides and embedded videos, maybe just maybe mention that in the chat room, and then somebody who's needing that resource could check in there. And
I would definitely recommend that if you are using videos within your worship, is that you have them downloaded onto your computer. Do not trust that YouTube or Vimeo will work. And I say that from personal experience of where if my tiny little computer, even though I love it dearly and I never want it to go away, I have to make sure that it stays with me for a little bit longer. That if I'm trying to host a Zoom meeting and to also have a YouTube up, and then I'm bringing the YouTube into the meeting, there's like 3 different places where that could go wrong, which is why it's always important to have it downloaded and to have somebody else. So talk about designating somebody as the screen sharer, and making sure that they have that information as well. So then that way you are, that you're sort of designating those roles, and you're also giving your own computer a break, and spacing things out. I do use screen share for videos, and I have a video on how to use screen share. I know, it's very meta. There we go. I'm going to drop it in here. And you can use screen sharing for pictures, for videos, for music. So yeah. Yes, and I've used PowerPoint pages. I like Google Slides the best, so then that way it doesn't take over both of my screens. So I have a 2-screen setup. That's why I kept looking over to that screen, and that has been the way that it's worked best for me. Recommendations for churches with less bandwidth for whose members, we have been, it went away. Are there recommendations for churches with less bandwidth or those whose members who have less bandwidth available to them at home? I would say it is always an option for people not to use their own, have their face up. That seems to work best, of where they are turning off their video. And I'll do a quick demonstration of where people can turn off their video and still fully participate by listening, by watching, but then that way it's just one less thing that is transmitted. Also, it also depends on if they're trying to participate within a Zoom meeting, or if it's something like a preloaded YouTube video that they can just sit and wait and have it buffer. So again, this is where that context is really, it's difficult to ascertain what the best options are. All right. Can I get my next question? chat box people.
Jay, I know you had some other questions that you were wanting us to ask. What
Yeah.
else for us?
Did you want me to bring up my secret list?
Yes.
Okay. And Jay has done an amazing job of pulling this all together. So I've never felt so prepared for a diocesan event. So thank you again. If I had not said that already, thank you again for the diocesan team for bringing me on and being so gracious when I wanted to not only do this meeting, but I also wanted to show up to your church leaders meeting as well. So thank you all. You guys have been so gracious.
Well, it's been wonderful to have, and my hope is that this can be the beginning of longer other conversations we might have, and we may have follow-up. I'm anticipating some follow-up conversations with you, Sarah, as we refine what we do and what we know. One of the questions that's come up that I think really does impact, that when we're rounding the corner to re-entering our buildings, discovered that our virtual worship reaches so many people, and people who previously have not been able to attend worship now are attending. Many of us are thinking through, wow, maybe we should keep doing this. What are some of your recommendations for doing some kind of live streaming or online presence when we've got people in the congregation? Do you have some brief guidelines for us to think about?
Yeah, I think it as is many of my options. It starts off with a lot of questions. Where is it daily offices that are bringing people in, or is it that it is the Sunday service, or is it just that it's just the sermon video? So many different things. Because if you're just putting up your sermon video, you can continue to do that. Or if it's daily offices, maybe you choose, Wednesday noonday prayer always on this virtual worship platform. And so I think that there's so many different opportunities to do that. And it's interesting because there are many evangelical churches that have the idea of the second campus, of that they spin off from their main big megachurch and have a second campus. And so I wonder, can we continue to have that second campus of the virtual church, or do they need to be integrated? And so these, again, it just depends on everybody's bandwidth. It depends on how different the audiences are. And, maybe that virtual church continues to be the main source of spiritual guidance for a large group of people that never show up into your buildings. So of course you would want to cultivate that community experience quite a bit, and making sure that you're upholding that as a legitimate worship experience and a legitimate worshiping community, and that you are cultivating them in the same ways for leadership, maybe even stewardship, that you would be for your in-person people.
Another question.
I'm answering your question with lots of questions.
And another question that came through, I'll just highlight for people who are calling in. Stephen Shaver also, one of the questions he's asking is, once we're allowed back in with, and likely it's going to be we're allowed in with a fewer number of people that normally would attend your church. Like no matter what the number is, my hunch it's going to be fewer than what you normally have. So if it's like 10 or 20, he's wondering, how do we preserve the sense of intimacy and participation among those who aren't present? And that's also a really good question.
Yeah. So at the Palm Sunday service, where I was the tech director, it's important for those tech director, clergy spouse, it all sort of flows all together. Zoom guru, there's so many different ways to describe what I do, of that making sure that that you're aware of the space, you're aware of what it appears online, that the worship leaders are understanding how they are being viewed, and that they're waiting for those who are listening in, who are attending virtually, and making certain that there are those back and forth opportunities, that maybe you have the presiders within the space but then you have the sermon and the readers that are online. So keeping that hybrid space, I think, will be where we will, that will be our next big step. And who knows how long that will happen. Who knows how long that will be the norm for. So I think that there are some ways that we can do a both and for a while.
So one of the big questions that came in prior to this was around the how do we recite together? And many of you have asked this, and that question of the cacophony that happens when we try to speak together. And Sarah, you had some interesting things to say about that in our pre-meeting. I think this group might enjoy hearing your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I talk a lot about establishing norms, establishing that group covenant of what worship looks like. And I think it's important to keep that going for as long as you possibly can, and recognizing that that there will be different voices heard. And I think that's a really important thing that we need to continue doing even when our worship is online, because, you know, in our typical service we have the gospeler, and we have the preacher, we have the presider, we have the prayers, we have the choir. You know, we keep on having all of these different voices, and so we need to make sure that we are keeping all of these voices when we're in these online spaces, and recognizing that that there will be opportunities where it gets messy. The places that I've been recommending that people have all unmuted, or people can opt to unmute, which is what I do. I opt to unmute sometimes, is at the Lord's Prayer, and then at the peace. Especially at the Lord's Prayer, again, spoken in the language of our hearts and the language in which we communicate to God. I think it can be a wonderful, messy way to understand that we're all in community together, despite our various stops and starts, and despite us overlapping one another. It's as if we were in the same room together. I know that I have a very quick way of speaking, and so I think that I frequently end my prayers well in advance of most people anyway. And so recognizing that that's just going to be something that happens. And I have to say, doing the peace online is really fun. And so you can see all of these people who are piecing in and zooming in, and it's really quite amazing. And if you are going to try to do voices all at once, I would recommend doing short call and responses, of where maybe it's a long prayer and then a 3-word response, and that's just because it's just easier to at least try and get people to sync up together. And a lot of it doesn't have to do with how we are seeing it. And the reason why none of our voices ever match up, even though we may try to slow down for various things, or we may try and speed up voices versus with the other voices that we hear, is because of all of our various internet connections. So anybody who has ever tried to live stream everything will have that experience of where the voice is saying it, but then it comes out about 3 seconds later from the computer. And so it's rough, I know. As somebody who likes everything to be prepared and talk about our run-throughs, but recognizing that there will be chaos for a few minutes within the liturgy is okay. And I think that it's just important to recognize that this is just the space that we're in and how we are dealing with it, but we're still able to all be together. And the Lord's Prayer is one of the ways that we can be together, and the peace is one of the ways that we can greet each other. I'm ready for the next one. Let's see. Oh, the designated responder. Yes, Penny, thank you so much for saying that. One of the ways that that you can, I talked about the leader, the worship leader, not being silent during that response time of the call and response, is having a designated second voice that is the voice of the people. And so then that way you could even do you could do the Psalms that way, and having 2 voices go back and forth. And so I think that way it definitely isn't that awkward silent pause, but it does, again, it gives the participants something to latch onto. Oh, 3 to 4 people. Okay, cool. Stephen is saying 3 to 4 people at a time. Awesome. That's great. That's great. I think we've always tried it with like 8 people, and we've tried it in various different ways. 8 people in the room when we've done staff meetings, and then 4 or 5 people on Zoom. And sometimes it's, you never know where everybody's internet connection is, and so it ends up being a lot. So I think there have been a few different questions for breakout groups. I love breakout groups. I do have a video about them. And my friend and colleague Meryl Watley at Membership Vision also has an amazing video about them as well. And so breakout groups are exactly what it sounds like. It's as if we would take this group and we would split it up into lots of little different meetings. And it's if you were in the church hall and saying, okay, we're going to split up into 10 groups. Everybody go into each of those Sunday school classrooms. And so everybody has their own individual meeting. They are not recorded, even when the main session is recorded. So that's important to recognize. The chat box also stays within that meeting. That's a private chat box. The breakout rooms are only available to those who are the host, and you have to make sure that you enable them within your pro account. And you can split it up into however many meetings you can possibly imagine. And it can be anywhere from 1 participant to 50. And I would definitely recommend them for formation opportunities, for Sunday school, for coffee hour. I know that I've also recommended them for churches that only have 1 Zoom account, but have lots of different meetings that are overlapping, of having everybody enter into that same Zoom link, and then you send them into the various different breakout groups in order to have their separate meetings that would go longer than more than 40 minutes. And I know that I have that, and it'll just take me a second to find that link for you all, and I'll add it onto the Google Doc as well, so that way you can have it. And again, breakout groups are only a function that are available to the host. They can be random, they can be assigned, any of the above. What's our next question? Friends who have been monitoring the chat box a little bit better than I.
So we've had a question around if you've got advice on how to count attendance. And we are releasing some very clear guidelines on how to record that attendance.
Yeah.
I just thought you might weigh in on the difference between somebody skimming by as they're scrolling through Facebook, and an actual attendee. Any thoughts?
Laughingly, this is the first time that somebody has asked me this, so I don't have an answer prepared. I know that at some point the General Convention Office said that they were going to produce those guidelines. I don't think that they have yet, right?
They've not yet done that. No, I'm waiting for that too. And that's fine, Sarah. I mean, just for those who are wondering about that, I've got a document that I'm about to send out to all of you that is going to include the difference between a 3-second view and somebody who was there at the time. And those are different. You know, just like you're not going to count somebody who stumbled through your door and then said, "Oh, it's wrong door," and then ran off down the street. we're gonna count it differently that way too. So okay, moving on then. Jade, what other I think you're next on asking a question, or any of you posting questions here in the chat. Any questions you have now?
Hang on. All right, so we have. I want to make sure that we handled. We have a question asking about having a YouTube channel specifically for each parish, or is it best to use your personal YouTube channel? What would be good to do there?
Yeah. So is this a person who has dual roles at 2 parishes? Or the
Yes.
same role at 2
Yes,
parishes?
they have 2 parishes.
Yeah. This is going to sound very technical. Are the parishes yoked or going to merge, or is it just that they happen to be serving at two parishes? Okay.
They're
cool.
serving
All
at
right.
two
Thanks,
parishes.
Thanks, Katie and Bishop
Yep.
Megan. So that's a hard question to answer. I think that this goes back to like some intellectual copyright, you know, who owns the sermon? Is it the parish that owns the sermon and it's on their platform, or is it the preacher's personal sermon, and sort of who can hold on to that recording or onto that YouTube video? I would probably recommend that this is going to sound horrible, you choose one and you keep going with that one. I don't think that that creating a new YouTube would probably be good advice, just because, again, the parishes aren't yoked, like they're not going to be merging together. But I think you would get into possible messiness by using personal YouTube. I know that with all of my how-to videos, I am working for the seminary, which is why I put it up onto the Lifelong Learning YouTube, because essentially everything that I'm doing, it has that imprimatur of lifelong learning on it. So I think that maybe if you've already been doing it on your personal, you go ahead and do that, and then you duplicate it and have it stored somewhere for each of those respective parishes. And I think it also depends if you're doing morning prayer for one and evening prayer for the other, making sure that both of those are on, again, the respective morning prayer and evening prayer parishes sites. Have any clergy tried using Zoom for office hours? Yes, I know quite a few people who have adopted Zoom for using office hours, including my husband's congregation has started doing that. And the VTS library has also started doing that at my recommendation. And then the HR department has also started doing open office hours. And the best way to do that is through a recurring meeting. So then that way you can have registration happen if you want to. And I like registration. I think it's a nice safeguard for me. And you can also I would definitely make sure to use a waiting room for clergy open office hours, because if you're in the middle of a pastoral conversation, you can sort of have somebody knock at the door and then you can choose to let them in. And I think that that's something that Katie, Andrea were addressing at the church leadership gathering on Tuesday. Recurring Zoom meetings are really easy to set up, and it's just it is nice, because then that way it's one link, the same link that people can use for, you know, the noon clergy office hours. So in that way it's the same thing.
We have one more question, Sarah, and it's a specific question about dealing with people who, do you have any practices that you've used in dealing with people who are having a hard time with Zoom and Facebook Live because they haven't used the computer before? Whatever do you have anything that you could share there?
Yeah, I think that that's a really helpful opportunity to create that that community connection of bringing in those tech deacons or tech-alites, or of saying, like, we know that this is frustrating and thank you so much for wanting to be continuing to be a part of our community. Let's connect you with somebody that can really help you, obviously from a distance, and taking those extra steps to do that community care. And if they're on Facebook, then Facebook Live is really easy to do, because then that way you can say, show up to the church Facebook page at 11 a.m. We'll be there. You can just watch. You don't even have to respond. Zoom, depending on your options, if they want to just call in, that's completely an option. I think that that's what somebody else said. Or if they're on their smartphone, again, They can just click on the link, it appears. They don't have to show their face. They don't have to show their voice. They can just observe. And I have to say that's what I do for a lot of the different worship services that I go to, is that I just sit there and observe. Sometimes I don't turn my camera on, and most of the times I don't unmute, and that's just sort of the way that I choose to decide to participate within the worships that I go to. It also gives me the opportunity to drop in a lot of my friends' worships. I don't know if anybody else has been Zoom shopping or church shopping like I have, so. I've only gotten called out on it once, though, where all of a sudden I got a text message just saying, I saw you sneak into my church back pew. I was like, oh, Zoom, Facebook gave me away.
To pipe in here and say this question, like anybody who is struggling with their technology or participation, this goes back again to your church culture. If with any part of their life, how would you handle it? Not during a COVID global pandemic. Most of the time, I handle it by a one-on-one phone call. What resources do they need? Does someone have something they could share? Empowering them to do what they're longing to, which is that connection. Letting them know you can just phone in and it's just fine to listen. But we're doing a lot of Zoom and some other technological things with our call processes, and I'm coaching a lot of octogenarians on technological use in some of our rural areas. And so every case, just I'm on the phone one-to-one, and it just takes time, but at the end of it, they're delighted, they're on board, they're on Zoom, they're doing it, they've figured out the video, and it actually works. And if they're afraid and heard that Facebook is the voice of the devil and all of that, you also just have to help coach them through that as well, and help them, how can they use it and feel safe? And it's the same thing that you would do if somebody was anxious about climbing the stairs. You'd build a ramp, or you'd help them get up the stairs. So that just, it goes all the way back to how would we do things without a global pandemic breathing down our necks.
I have two more specific questions that are regarding actual equipment.
I can try and help.
So Jay he's freezing up and struggling. He's texting me his speaking of, the tech goes down, redundancy is good. I suspect. Oh, are you back?
Keeps on wandering.
Oh, I'm sorry, was I gone?
Coming and going here, so go quick.
All right, so it's about a webcam, going up from a webcam. What's the next level up from a webcam and having multiple angles?
Yeah, so I have been looking around for a very good hardware recommendation. And I laughingly am not like a gearhead. So I'm dropping in a good link there through Boxcast, which is a platform. You don't have to pay attention to that branding of it, but it does give a very clear, like, these are the steps that you can do. If you're above the webcam, then that's totally fine. Here's a good video camcorder for it, and so it's a very clear step-by-step. Of, if you're just doing it by your onesies and you just need a webcam, that's totally fine. Or if you're ready to go like full on, MTV video creation. So I think there's a different possibilities of that. So I think there was a question about the donate button on Facebook. When I was in my previous open office hours on Tuesday, my friend Bill Campbell, who is the Director of Institutional Advancement at Episcopal Church Foundation, was in with me. He's done fundraising for many, many years. And so he was saying that it is hard to get set up on Facebook as a nonprofit. It essentially requires like 3 forms of ID, blood, fingerprints, all of the ways that that the big brother of Facebook can make it difficult for you. And he was also saying that it is an easy way to get people to donate. but it takes a lot of time to get that money. Like it can take over 3 months of where it can just be sort of held by the system that that does those donation platforms, which is called Network for Good. But again, this comes back to your community culture. If that is an easy way to get people to donate, then you might want to go ahead and look into it. So know that it would be quite a path in order to get the money and in order to set that up.
I'm going to just weigh in on this. We've seen a lot of success. Cliff just posted, they're directing folks to their website. I know Jim Richardson at the Cathedral, when they post the link to the Facebook, when you go on the Facebook, there's a welcome to our worship service, click here to donate. And then I think you embed it within the service comments as well at some point. And then there's the verbal instruction. Okay, Jim's just posted on what they do.
The Realm online giving link. Yeah, so if you have Realm, it's awesome.
Well, or any other kind of thing, like whatever you do, like we've been working very hard to make sure all of our churches have a link on their website for online giving. And so that should be something that's incorporated in. And then to mention it and make space. Sarah, when you were talking earlier about making sure that you're aware of your online presence, that offering is another part of it. Like just you're passing a virtual plate. So give people the chance to give during that offering time, because it takes a minute to get that card out and type in your number.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know I've also seen it where people are like, okay, this is the time that we do your offering. If that's your normal experience, take out your checkbook, write it out to the church, put it in an envelope, drop it off. Like keeping up with those normal routines that we ask about.
So I think that Katie has been working on a poll. We have
I'm excited.
Sarah, the bishop asked for a poll. We're giving her a poll. So, Katie, you're on. This is a lot. So here we go. So everybody, if you're on your phone, I'm sorry, I don't know. No, I think you could be able to do it on your phone. So here we go. Oh, we're going to get to see Sarah's dog. So those of you who are on audio only and not on a smartphone, we are taking a poll, which is asking if we are doing, which of the following platforms is your church currently using? And it's multiple choice, a Zoom or Zoom webinar, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, pre-recorded service, Twitch, Vimeo, or other. And for those of you who do not have visuals, Sarah's puppy, I can't remember her name.
It's him, he's Lucas, and he was outside whining, which is what he does. And so when I closed the door because I was trying to not have him in here, and but he got the best of me.
Well, we're a casual diocese, and Lucas is welcome.
Lucas.
Can you put it up again? Oh, too late.
Okay.
So I just shared the results. So you can take a poll, you can ask as many questions as you want, you can have single answers, you can have multiple choice answers, and then you have the opportunity to share the results or not share the results. You can also relaunch it if you needed to go ahead and relaunch it because maybe somebody wanted to do it again. So
I know that that some dioceses have started talking about what a diocesan convention will look like, and so what I've been saying is that I feel like Zoom polls would work well for voting by acclamation, but not necessarily for more official types of board or committee voting. So I don't know if you all have started down that path or not.
we have.
So, it's super fascinating. I say Bishop Megan is a former candidate to the ordinary. Of course, you all have started down that path. Okay, I figured.
Oh,
Never
yes.
mind.
But I will say, while people are putting in their last answers, I had a silly, this is not a bishop recommendation. This is a Megan thought. And that is, you know, maybe simply show our adorable pets during the offertory. It may be that certain dogs bring out more offerings. I don't know, but you know, who knows? I'm joking, of course, but we see our pets a lot.
And I mean, there's lots of fun that you can have if you're doing your worship online, like talking about, you know, offering up our pets or our pet pictures as Thanksgivings and gratitudes, so that so many of our pets are keeping us sane, that, you know, they have to go on 5 walks a day. So it gets you away from the computer and out of the house. And so I think that there's lots of ways that you can incorporate fun things that are not typically present in a church building. So. And you can also see one of the fun things that Bishop Megan is doing is that she has a virtual background happening. Bishop Megan, where is that virtual background from?
Well, I'm glad you asked. This virtual background is our cathedral. And
Oh,
so
lovely.
you can see that the beautiful banner is there. Now, the banner is not usually in the middle of the center aisle because you'd have to walk around it. But if I am preaching, this is sort of what it looks like, except there are people sitting in all of those nice wooden pews. So this is sort of the view from the altar into the depths of our cathedral.
Awesome. I know there have been quite a few fun virtual backgrounds that have appeared, including like Disney put out some Disneyland and Disney World backgrounds. Sesame Street put out some backgrounds that my mother let me know about. So lots of opportunities to bring in levity. And I think the Diocese of Michigan has daily online Zoom meetings with their youth. And so they play Where in the World. So again, talking about using Zoom for things other than worship. So fun things like Where in the World, and having the kids change their backgrounds and then everybody has to guess where they are, or doing trivia, or doing breakout groups, or, you know, movie discussions via Zoom as well. So there's lots of things that's not worship, or not such serious events like vestry meetings. Yes, so backgrounds or screen sharing or chat or links can all be misused. So I fully acknowledge that, which is why all of those things can be shut down as options. Screen sharing, chat, and virtual backgrounds can all be shut down.
And it's also why having the co-hosts is so important, because
Yes.
if one person doesn't catch it, your other co-host might.
Exactly. What other questions do we have? I can't believe that we still have 72 people on after an hour and 45 minutes. I feel like you all need a stretch break or something.
And we may end early. One of the things that we're looking at, of course, we're looking at when we will be back in our churches, knowing that it will be likely some sort of staged reentry. The other thing we're looking at is how do we do the things that are so vibrant to our churches, like faith formation and connecting and welcoming new people and things like that. And so I'm curious if you have questions around that, or if you want to put in the chat box what might be helpful for future sorts of teachings and trainings, because we'll just have Sarah back as often as she can come back. And so if you want to make suggestions for what are you wondering about? And what could we offer you? And we'd love to know that.
And kudos to Earl for using closed captions with Facebook Live. So that's pretty awesome. I find captions to be an incredibly daunting experience. So kudos to you. Extra snaps from Louisiana for that. And also I saw that Jo put a beautiful stained glass window behind her. Way to use a virtual background.
This is from England, when we went with Bishop Barry on a pilgrimage last summer.
Lovely. I think that what's interesting is that you're in people's homes, obviously, like you met my dog. And like, I think that there are ways that you can, if people are willing to invite the church community into homes, which is not typically something that we do unless you're hosting a book study or a dinner group or something like that, of allowing people to tell their stories through their home or through their object, or showing their home altar, or if they have sort of a little commemoration table of all of their loved ones that have gone on to glory. And so I think that there are ways that we can tell our stories, again, that wouldn't be typical in our church buildings. And that connection is really what sustains us throughout all of the things that we're experiencing.
So there's a question that's come up, maybe and we may follow up in a bigger way, but the question came up is, what about a pop-up or something visitors could click to say they want someone to contact them or want more info? Assuming that it looks like the majority of our people are using Facebook Live or some combination of Facebook Live and Zoom. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I would say Facebook Live or Zoom. So with Zoom, if you're using registration, you get people's information. You can also do a registration report on Zoom, so you can get that information. You can say, fill out our welcome information, or fill out our 3-question survey about, not 10, not like 20, just 3, about why you stopped by today and what your prayer requests are, or how you're hoping to be more involved with our community. And so I think that there's quick ways to turn those pew cards into digital platforms. So that's totally an option of just putting it within the chat box, or even having, if Andrea is a designated welcomer host, then having the designated welcomer host reach out to Grant and say, hey, Grant, I think you're new here. We'd love to, I'd love to share more about my experience at St. Swithin's. And if you want to, you can fill out this information. And definitely on Facebook, you can encourage people to like the page, or to do that same experience of having, if you're doing Facebook Live, of having a moderator drop in a comment that has the link to the survey, or even on Facebook, you can have people chat and have people slide into the messages. So then that way that you have that extra connection with them. And again, just as if you were going through the recession line and the handshake exit. So then that way the priest could introduce themselves.
So like if we're on Facebook Live, then maybe if you're leading the service, I would be monitoring the chat and just say, hey, those of you who are new here, click this link and go into our website for a whatever, or let us know you're here, and if you want a special prayer, pray to me or something like that. Is that what you—
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this goes back to, like, there always should be a moderator for the comments, whether it's live, or whether it's a premiere, going back to Safe Church, and also just distributing all of the jobs. Again, the one person who is preaching and leading the service does not need to be the one person who is also tech support and who is also moderating the comments. Spreading the wealth of and making sure that we have lots of different welcoming voices on top of it. I think Alan asked about resources on Zoom etiquette, lighting, camera position. I have a very funny video that is the Zoom foibles that I've done, and some of them I completely made up. But again, I always try to have my body take up about, I think, depending on the moment, 1/3 to 1/2 of the screen, making sure that my eyes are level to the computer right there, to the camera. So then that way, when I look into the camera, it looks like I'm looking at you, Alan. And so making sure that it's not like up the nose, or there's always the epic forehead shot of inevitably, like, people are looking at their BCP. And that would be another thing of making sure that if you're leading, you have the BCP online up on your computer. So then that way, again, you're not doing the up and down motion that we see so frequently. And I was just watching one of my videos that I made last fall, I think, and I had my piece of paper, I think, like off to the side a little bit, like over on like the bottom right. And so I was watching myself read the little piece of paper, and it was I've obviously learned a lot over the past few years of being on camera, but actually watching yourself on video, it is the worst experience ever. I fully acknowledge that, but it is also really helpful. So then that way you can see like, oh, I clearly broke eye contact with my congregation. Like that's tough. But you could even do it on fast forward on like, 2 times or whatever. So then that way, like you at least like get it over with a little bit quicker. But really, of really like embracing, like, this is a learning experience. This is an experiment. It's going to be hard to watch yourself on camera. It's going to be hard to watch those liturgical choreographies go wrong, but it's all a learning experience. And it's also an experiment for you as a church leader and as well as for the congregation.
So we're rounding to the end of our time here. And Sarah, let's all just give Sarah a big hand here. Let's say thank you to Sarah. I think we've started a friendship across the country that will last. And before I hand this off to the bishop for closing comments and a closing prayer and a blessing, I want to thank each one of you for coming and participating and for the heavy lift. We have started 60 new virtual congregations this month. And this is an incredible congregational moment for us. It's an incredible church moment. We have blessed people, and we have been blessed by this. And we are gospel people, and we're doing it. We really are, in our beautiful ways, and each in our own place, reflecting our own context, our own gifts and graces, and with tech glitches and stumbles and fumbles and glorious music and halting music or no music at all, reaching people who have fallen away from the church, people who are seeking to find a faith community in the midst of great despair. We have shown up, and we continue to show up. And so thank you, Sarah, for your guidance for us. And thank you, Jay, for helping to put this together. Katie and Peggy for support. And so, Bishop, would you encourage us and send us and bless us?
Yes, I am happy to do that. As I listened to talking about how we set this up or how we manage bandwidth, all the things that seem to be a mild frustrations on this, it strikes me that this is the incarnate life as well, right? Our Lord Jesus Christ came to live among us. And part of our incarnate life is all of the bits that it takes to actually put this on and to share the good news, doing our best to share the good news with what we have right now. And then the other thing I was thinking about is that this is definitely part of our walk as disciples. Just because it involves tech does not mean it does not involve our walk as disciples following Jesus. This is all about not just skills, but hope, courage, willing to take the risk of walking down the path that God unaccountably seems to be pointing us towards, all of us right now. And that's about that trusting relationship with God. And so you all are part of that relationship and are encouraging others on that path. Know that you do not walk alone. I walk with you, this whole group, we walk together, but most of all, the Holy Spirit is walking with you and ahead of you into untold numbers of living rooms and kitchens and sofas and bedrooms where people need to hear words of hope and need to see other real life people, and they get to see us and to hear the gospel. So my friends, thank you. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And the blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit be upon you now and remain with you always. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
One.
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good to see your faces again.
Thank you.
Also, thank you
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Sarah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.